Captain Olivia Grant rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the main screen on the bridge of the UES Valiant. The massive alien fleet appeared as hundreds of red dots moving steadily toward Earth. They had crossed Neptune's orbit earlier that day. Now they were approaching the asteroid belt. Soon they would reach Mars. "They're coming faster than we expected," said Alan Peters, looking up from his science station. His usual calm voice now held a note of worry. Olivia nodded. "How long until they reach Earth's defense perimeter?" "At current speed, less than 20 hours, Alan replied. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. After decades of intercepting alien communications, after years of preparing for this moment, humanity was about to face its greatest threat. The Zoraxians had arrived. Olivia pressed a button on her command chair. "Admiral Doyle to the bridge, please." Minutes later, Admiral Carter Doyle strode onto the bridge. His silver hair was neatly trimmed and his uniform was spotless as always. Despite the crisis, he maintained a steady demeanor that helped calm the crew. "Status report," he demanded, standing beside Olivia. "The Zoraxian fleet has accelerated. Sir, they'll reach our defensive line in less than 20 hours. Doyle frowned. "That's sooner than we hoped. Call the senior staff to the war room immediately." 30 minutes later, Olivia sat at the large table in the war room with the other officers. Chief Tactical Officer Maria Rodriguez pulled up a 3D map of the solar system, showing the approaching alien fleet. "From what we can tell, they've brought 17 dreadnoughts, each at least 3 times the size of our largest vessel," Maria explained, pointing to the largest red markers, plus over 200 support ships and fighter carriers. Frank Johnson, the communications specialist, spoke next. "We've intercepted and translated some of their communications. They're confident, to say the least. They refer to Earth as an easy acquisition and humans as soft bodies." Admiral Doyle's expression hardened. "They've conquered 17 systems before reaching us, all with minimal resistance. And now they think we'll be the same," Olivia said. Alan Peters pulled up images of the Zoraxians from their intelligence files. The aliens stood over 7 feet tall with glistening crystal-like exoskeletons covering their bodies. Their arms ended in pincer-like hands and their faces were masked by natural armor plating. "Their biology is remarkable," Alan said. "The exoskeleton is comparable to diamond in hardness. Their muscles can generate 5 times the force of a human's and their reaction speed is nearly twice as fast." Maria added, "Their technology is estimated to be at least 3 centuries ahead of ours. Their ships have energy shields we can barely detect, let alone penetrate with our weapons." Everyone in the room understood the gravity of the situation. Humanity was outmatched in nearly every way. "Is there any good news?" Doyle asked dryly. Before anyone could answer, the main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. The image of a Zoraxian appeared, its crystalline face reflecting the light in geometric patterns. "This is Supreme War Leader Kethax of the Zoraxian Empire," the alien announced in a voice that sounded like grinding stones. "I address the leaders of Earth. Your planet has been selected for resource extraction. Our scans indicate large reserves of fresh water and rare minerals essential to our expansion." The alien paused, its forearms moving in what seemed like a formal gesture. "The Galactic Council has classified your species as Category 5, physically inadequate and technologically primitive. Resistance would result in unnecessary casualties. You will surrender within 24 Earth hours. If you comply, we will permit a portion of your population to remain as labor. If you resist, we will begin planetary bombardment, targeting your largest population centers first." The transmission cut off abruptly. Admiral Doyle looked around the table. "Well, at least they're giving us time to respond. They must be very confident." Frank checked his console. "Sir, the transmission went out to every communications device on Earth. Everyone has seen it." Reports began flooding in. Panic was spreading. In major cities, some governments were already discussing surrender terms. "We need to respond," Olivia said. "The public needs to know we have a plan." Admiral Doyle nodded. "I'll address the United Earth Council in 1 hour. In the meantime, initiate Defense Protocol Omega and get me Dr. Eleanor Price immediately." As the officers filed out, Doyle held Olivia back. "Captain, I need you to prepare the fleet. Position them according to the Omega Protocol, but make it look disorganized. I want the Zoraxians to think we're panicking." Olivia understood. "You're activating Project Sunburst, aren't you? It's time to see if Dr. Price's theory holds up. Humanity's survival depends on it." 3 hours later, Dr. Eleanor Price arrived, on the Valiant. Her reputation preceded her, Earth's leading xenobiologist and the architect of Project Sunburst. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "The Zoraxians are exactly as our intelligence suggested," she said, examining the scans of their fleet. "Their ships are composed of the same crystalline material as their bodies. It's their greatest strength, but potentially their greatest weakness." "Explain," Doyle demanded. Eleanor pulled up her research. "Their exoskeletons evolved on a world with minimal radiation from their sun. Our tests suggest they're highly sensitive to specific frequencies of electromagnetic radiation, frequencies that humans have evolved alongside for millions of years." Olivia leaned forward. "So your device will work?" "In theory, yes. 5 minutes of exposure should cause molecular destabilization in their exoskeletons, but we need to get close enough to their command ships to deploy it. Meanwhile, in a secure hangar bay deep within the Valiant, Lieutenant Paul Bennett briefed his team beside 4 modified stealth shuttles. These small craft had been designed specifically for this mission. "Remember your training," Paul told the 20 men and women who would join him. "The fate of our species rests on this mission. Once we launch, we'll have one chance to position the Sunburst devices." Lisa Clark, weapons specialist, was checking the 4 Sunburst devices, each no larger than a suitcase but containing technology that represented humanity's greatest achievement. "Will they really work?" whispered Joe Martinez, the systems engineer. Lisa nodded. "Dr. Price thinks so, and I trust her science more than I fear their weapons." Back on the bridge, Olivia watched as Earth's defense fleet moved into position. To the untrained eye, it looked chaotic, ships seemingly deployed without strategic sense. But there was a carefully calculated plan behind every movement. The first Zoraxian scout ships entered Mars orbit. Earth vessels in the area engaged them, briefly before retreating, appearing to flee in disarray. "They're taking the bait," Frank reported, monitoring alien communications. "They think we're disorganized and afraid." Admiral Doyle gave a grim smile. "Good. The more overconfident they are, the better our chances." The aliens had labeled humans as weak. They saw Earth as an easy conquest. In less than 20 hours, they would learn just how wrong they were. On the main screen, the massive alien armada advanced toward Earth, unaware that the battle would be over in just 5 minutes and not in the way they expected. Dr. Eleanor Price stood in the dimly lit laboratory deep within the Rocky Mountains. 10 years of her life had led to this moment. Around her, dozens of scientists worked at their stations, making final adjustments to smaller versions of the Sunburst device. The main prototype sat in the center of the room, a deceptively simple-looking metal box with a glass panel on top. "Is it ready?" asked General Susan Hayes, who had just entered the lab. The general had overseen Project Sunburst from the beginning, fighting for funding when most military leaders wanted to build bigger guns instead. "As ready as it will ever be," Eleanor replied. She touched the device gently. "We've never tested it on actual Zoraxians, of course, but the simulations are promising," the general nodded. "It has to work. We have no plan B." Eleanor knew this all too well. She had spent years studying intercepted Zoraxian communications and biological samples collected from their previous conquered worlds. The aliens' crystal exoskeletons were nearly impervious to conventional weapons, but they had a hidden weakness. "Their home planet orbits a red dwarf star," Eleanor explained to the general, though she had explained it many times before. "They evolved with minimal exposure to certain radiation frequencies that are common on Earth. Our sun produces these frequencies naturally, but the Zoraxians have adapted their ships and armor to filter them out." She activated a screen showing microscopic images of Zoraxian exoskeleton samples. "However, if we can expose them to concentrated bursts of these specific frequencies, Their molecular structure begins to destabilize. 5 minutes of exposure is all we need. General Hayes frowned. And you're sure they haven't detected this weakness themselves? Their arrogance is our advantage, Eleanor said. They consider themselves physically superior to humans in every way. Why would they look for weaknesses in what they see as their greatest strength? A young scientist approached with a tablet. Dr. Price, Admiral Doyle is requesting an update. The Zoraxian fleet will be within Earth's defense perimeter in 12 hours. Eleanor took a deep breath. Tell him we're ready to deploy. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Valiant, Lieutenant Paul Bennett led his team through final preparations. The 4 stealth shuttles had been modified extensively for this mission. Their hulls were coated with a material that absorbed radar and other detection methods. Their engines had been rebuilt to minimize heat signatures. One more systems check, Paul ordered as his team moved around the shuttles. Lisa Clark was calibrating the sunburst device in the lead shuttle. Unlike the larger prototype in the Mountain Lab, these field units were compact enough to fit in the shuttle's cargo bay. Power cells at maximum capacity, Lisa reported. The device will run for exactly 7 minutes once activated. We only need 5. Joe Martinez finished his diagnostic on the stealth systems. Cloak is functioning at 98% efficiency. The Zoraxians would need to be looking directly at us to see anything. Pilot Samantha Wright climbed out of the cockpit of her shuttle. Navigation is set. I've plotted 3 alternate approach vectors in case we meet resistance. Paul nodded, satisfied. His team had trained for this mission for 5 years, running simulations until they could do it in their sleep. Each person knew their role perfectly. Still, the reality of what they were about to attempt weighed heavily on them. In 8 hours, we launch, Paul told them. Get some rest if you can. None of them would sleep, of course. Earth stood on the brink of either survival or extinction. Rest seemed impossible. On the bridge of the Valiant, Captain Olivia Grant watched as reports came in from around the solar system. The Zoraxian fleet had pushed past Mars now, destroying the small human outposts there with minimal effort. They're not even bothering to capture our facilities, Frank Johnson said, monitoring communications. They're just eliminating anything human they find. Admiral Doyle entered the bridge, his face grim. They've sent another message. He nodded to Frank, who played the transmission on the main screen. Once again, the crystalline face of Supreme War Leader Cathax appeared. Your attempts at resistance near Mars were pathetic, the alien said. We have observed your defensive positions around Earth as well. Your strategy is flawed and your technology primitive. We will be merciful and offer you one final chance to surrender before we arrive. The transmission ended. They think we're completely outmatched, Olivia said quietly. Admiral Doyle gave a small smile. And that's exactly what we want them to think. The next few hours passed in tense preparation. Across Earth's orbit, defense stations were evacuated, in full view of the approaching alien fleet. It looked like panic. It appeared as though humanity was giving up and trying to save as many lives as possible before the inevitable defeat. The Zoraxians observed this and grew even more confident. Their communications, which Frank continued to intercept and translate, spoke of an easy victory and the wealth of resources they would soon control. 3 hours before the alien fleet would reach Earth, Admiral Doyle called a final briefing with his key officers and Dr. Price, who had arrived from the mountain facility. The evacuation theater has worked, he said. The Zoraxians believe we are in disarray. Now for phase 2 of the plan. He turned to Dr. Price. Explain one more time. How Sunburst will work, Doctor? Eleanor stood and pulled up a diagram of a Zoraxian ship. These vessels are partially organic, grown from the same crystalline structure as their bodies. The hull will transmit the sunburst radiation throughout the ship. Once Bennett's team places the devices near the command ships, we need to keep the aliens engaged for 5 minutes. After that, their exoskeletons will begin to fail. And what exactly happens when their exoskeletons fail? Maria Rodriguez asked. Their armor becomes brittle, even fragile, Eleanor explained. Their ships will lose structural integrity. Their weapon systems will shut down as the crystalline power conduits fracture. Olivia looked concerned. Won't they detect the radiation and retreat before the 5 minutes are up? The frequencies we're using don't register on their sensors, Eleanor assured her. By the time they realize what's happening, it will be too late. Admiral Doyle surveyed the room. This is it then. Earth's last stand. If Bennett's team fails, there won't be a second chance. In the shuttle bay, Paul's team made their final preparations. Each person checked their equipment one last time. The 4 sunburst devices were loaded and secured. Remember, Paul told them, we need to place these devices within 500 meters of the 4 largest Zoraxian ships. Once they're activated, get clear as quickly as possible. Lisa asked the question they were all thinking. What if it doesn't work? Paul looked at each team member. Then we will have tried everything possible to save our world. But it will work. It has to. As the Zoraxian fleet entered Earth's outer defense perimeter, Admiral Doyle gave the order. Launch the stealth shuttles. 4 small craft slipped away. From the Valiant, their engines barely registering on any sensors. They moved silently toward the approaching alien armada, humanity's greatest hope hidden in plain sight. The battle for Earth was about to begin. The 4 stealth shuttles moved silently through space. Lieutenant Paul Bennett watched through the viewport as the massive alien fleet grew larger. The Zoraxian ships were unlike anything humans had built. They looked like giant crystals with glowing lines running across their surfaces. Approaching optimal deployment range, Samantha said quietly from the pilot's seat. Her hands moved steadily over the controls, keeping the shuttle on course. Paul checked the mission timer. 20 minutes until we reach our positions. Status check on the other shuttles. Joe Martinez monitored the communications. All teams reporting green. No detection from the alien fleet so far. Inside the other shuttles, the teams were equally tense. Each carried a sunburst device that needed to be placed near one of the 4 largest Zoraxian ships. If even one team failed, the plan might not work. On the Valiant, Admiral Doyle gave the order to begin Phase 3 of their plan. All ships move to engage the enemy. Remember, make it look like we're fighting desperately but failing. Earth's defense fleet accelerated toward the alien armada. The human ships were smaller and less advanced, but there were hundreds of them. They launched missiles and fired energy weapons as they approached. The Zoraxian fleet barely seemed concerned. Their shields absorbed most of the human attacks with ease. They returned fire, destroying several Earth vessels with each shot. They're taking the bait, Maria reported, watching the tactical display. The Zoraxians are moving into attack formation just as we predicted. Admiral Doyle nodded grimly. The plan required sacrifices. Real ships with real crews were being destroyed to maintain the illusion of a desperate, failing defense. On the main screen, the alien fleet spread out in a specific pattern. The 4 largest ships, the command vessels, took positions at the corners of a square formation with smaller ships filling the space between them. Perfect, Doyle said quietly. They're using their standard conquest formation. They don't think they need anything special for us. Supreme War Leader Cathax watched from his command ship as the human fleet attacked. The alien leader felt nothing but contempt for the primitive vessels firing their weak weapons against his mighty armada. Their efforts are amusing, Cathax said to his officers. They must know they cannot win, yet they fight anyway. His second-in-command gestured with 2 of his 4 arms. Perhaps they hope to delay the inevitable. Should we speed up our attack? Cathax's crystalline face reflected the lights of the bridge. No. Let them exhaust themselves. It makes no difference. In 1 hour, their world will be ours. The alien leader sent another message to Earth's governments. Your military forces are failing. Surrender now and we will spare your largest cities from the first wave of bombardment. Several nations were already discussing terms of surrender. Fear spread across Earth as people watched the battle unfolding in space. News broadcasts showed Zoraxian ships destroying human vessels with ease. But this was all part of Admiral Doyle's plan. The more confident the aliens became, the less likely they would notice 4 small shuttles slipping between their ships. Paul's shuttle approached the largest Zoraxian vessel, the flagship of Supreme War Leader Cathax. We're entering the danger zone, Samantha warned. Their automated defenses might detect us even with our stealth systems. Paul checked the sunburst device one last time. Stay the course. We need to get within 500 meters of their hull. Lisa monitored the status of the device. Sunburst is ready for activation. Power levels at maximum. The shuttle slipped closer to the massive alien ship. From this distance, the crystalline structure of the vessel was even more impressive. It seemed to pulse with internal light like a living thing. 400 meters, Samantha reported. 350. 300? Suddenly, alarms blared inside the shuttle. We've been detected, Joe shouted. Their defense systems are locking onto us. Paul remained calm. We expected this. Might happen. Samantha, evasive maneuvers. Get us to deployment position. The shuttle jerked sharply as Samantha pushed the engines to their limits. Energy beams from the alien ship sliced through space around them. The other teams are reporting similar detection, Joe said. Shuttles 2 and 4 are still undetected. Shuttle 3 is taking fire but still on course. Paul opened a channel. To all teams. Stay focused. Even if only one device reaches position, we can still succeed. On the Valiant, Olivia watched with growing concern as reports came in. 2 of Bennett's shuttles have been detected, she told Admiral Doyle. They just need to get close enough, Doyle replied, his face tense. Tell the fleet to increase their attacks. Draw more attention away from the shuttles. Earth's fleet intensified their assault, concentrating fire on the smaller Zoraxian vessels. This forced the aliens to respond, drawing some of their attention away from the detected shuttles. Inside, Cathax's flagship alarm sounded. Supreme War Leader, we have detected small human vessels approaching the command ships, an officer reported. Cathax seemed unconcerned. Destroy them. They pose no threat to us. They appear to be specially designed stealth craft, the officer continued. 2 have already evaded our initial defense systems. For the first time, Cathax felt a flicker of concern. Direct more weapons to target these vessels. What are they attempting? Back on Paul's shuttle, they were nearly in position despite taking damage. Hull breach in Section 3, Joe reported. Sealing bulkheads. 200 meters, Samantha said. We're almost there. Lisa had the sunburst device ready. Preparing for deployment. Another energy beam struck the shuttle, sending everyone tumbling. Warning lights flashed across all control panels. Engine failing, Samantha shouted over the alarms. We're losing power. Paul made a quick decision. We're close enough. Deploy the device now. Lisa activated the deployment sequence. A small airlock opened in the shuttle's hull, and the sunburst device was ejected toward the alien flagship. Device deployed, Lisa confirmed. Activation in 30 seconds. The other teams reported in. Shuttle 2 had successfully deployed its device near the second command ship. Shuttle 3 was heavily damaged but had managed to release its device before losing power. Shuttle 4 was still maneuvering into position. Get us out of here, Paul ordered Samantha. Maximum speed, any direction. As their damaged shuttle pulled away, Paul watched the small sunburst device floating near the massive alien flagship. A tiny box against an enormous crystal ship. It seemed impossibly small to save an entire planet. Across the battlefield, 3 of the 4 devices had been successfully deployed. The 4th was still on its way. In less than a minute, they would activate simultaneously. On the Valiant, Admiral Doyle received the confirmation he had been waiting for. 3 devices in position, 4th approaching target. He turned to Dr. Price. Will 3 be enough? Eleanor nodded tensely. 3 should create enough field overlap to affect all 4 command ships. It's not ideal, but it should work. Doyle opened a channel to all Earth forces. All ships, pull back to safe distance. I repeat, all ships withdraw immediately. The Ryu. Human fleet began retreating, much to the confusion of the Zoraxians. Supreme War Leader Cathax watched with suspicion. Why are they retreating so suddenly, he asked. Scan those deployed devices immediately. But it was already too late. The sunburst devices activated simultaneously, bathing the alien command ships in invisible radiation. The 5-minute countdown had begun. The battle for Earth had reached its critical moment. The sunburst devices floated silently near the massive Zoraxian command ships. They looked tiny and harmless against the enormous crystal vessels. No visible light or energy came from them. They simply drifted in space, invisible to most Zoraxian sensors. On the bridge of his flagship, Supreme War Leader Kathax ordered his crew to analyze the strange objects. What are these devices? What is their purpose? His science officer studied the readings. They appear to be emitting some form of radiation, but our sensors cannot identify it. The energy signature is unlike anything in our database. Kathax felt the first stirrings of real concern. Destroy them immediately. Weapons fire lashed out from the alien ships, striking two of the sunburst devices. The small boxes exploded in brief flashes of light. But it was too late. They had already been active for nearly a minute. The third device is hidden behind one of our support vessels, the tactical officer reported. We cannot get a clear shot. Kathax stood from his command chair. Move the ship, find that device and destroy it. On the Valiant, Admiral Doyle watched the timer counting down. 1 minute elapsed, he announced to the bridge crew. 4 minutes to go. Dr. Price studied the data from the sunburst devices before they were destroyed. The radiation pattern was perfect. Even with 2 devices gone, the effect has begun. The crystalline structures of their ships are already showing microscopic fractures. Olivia looked at the main screen where the battle continued. How soon? Until they notice something is wrong. Soon, Eleanor replied. Very soon. Lieutenant Paul Bennett's damaged shuttle limped away from the battle zone. Through the viewport, he watched the massive alien fleet. Nothing seemed to be happening yet. Did it work? Lisa asked, bandaging a cut on Joe's forehead. The shuttle had taken heavy damage during their escape. Too early to tell, Paul replied. We need to wait the full 5 minutes. Samantha worked to keep their failing engines running. I don't know if we'll last 5 minutes. Life support is dropping and we're leaking air. Paul opened a channel to the other shuttles. Team 2, what's your status? We're intact, came the reply. Watching and waiting. Team 3? Heavy damage. Most systems failed, but we have visual on the command ships. Team 4? There was no response from the 4th shuttle. They had either been destroyed or their communications were down. Paul looked at his team. No matter what happens to us, remember that we did our part. The devices are deployed, now we wait. Aboard the Zoraxian flagship, the first signs of trouble appeared 2 minutes into the exposure. A crew member noticed small cracks forming on his arm. Supreme War Leader, something is happening to my exoskeleton. Kathax turned to look and saw tiny fracture lines spreading across the crew member's crystalline surface. Before he could respond, another officer reported similar issues. My exoskeleton is developing cracks as well, the officer said, holding up his forearms to show the spreading fractures. Kathax suddenly felt it too, a strange sensation in his outer layers as if they were becoming brittle. He looked down at his own body and saw the same fracture patterns beginning to form. What is happening? He demanded. Scan the ship. Scan our bodies. The science officer worked frantically at his station, but his crystalline fingers were also beginning to crack. The radiation from those human devices, it's affecting our molecular structure. The resonance pattern is disrupting our atomic bonds. For the first time in his long military career, Kathax felt fear. How is this possible? Their technology is primitive. On the Valiant, the countdown continued. 3 minutes elapsed, Admiral Doyle announced. 2 minutes remaining. Reports began coming in from their sensors. The Zoraxian fleet was showing signs of distress. Several smaller ships had already lost power and were drifting. The larger vessels were firing their weapons erratically, sometimes hitting their own ships. It's working, Olivia said, hardly daring to believe it. Their ships are failing. Dr. Price nodded. The radiation affects their ship hulls first, since they're thinner than their personal armor. But soon their exoskeletons will begin to fail too. Frank Johnson was monitoring alien communications. Sir, their communications are becoming chaotic. They're panicking. Many are demanding to know what's happening to them. Inside the Zoraxian flagship, conditions deteriorated rapidly. Control panels cracked under the touch of officers trying to operate them. Support beams began to snap. The crystalline power core developed a web of fractures that spread with each passing second. "Retreat," Cathax ordered, his voice distorted as his facial plates began to separate. "All ships retreat immediately." But many ships could no longer respond. Their engines failed as power conduits shattered. Navigation systems went offline as control crystals disintegrated. Weapons systems overloaded and exploded. At the 4-minute mark, the Zoraxian fleet was in complete disarray. Nearly half their ships had lost power entirely. The others were trying to retreat but moving slowly and erratically. Paul Bennett watched from his crippled shuttle. "It's actually working," he said in awe. "Look at them falling apart." The massive alien vessels that had seemed so indestructible were now breaking apart before their eyes. Crystal shards floated away from the hulls. Internal explosions rippled through the larger ships as systems failed catastrophically. 4.5 minutes, Admiral Doyle reported on the Valiant. 30 seconds to go. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the mighty Zoraxian fleet collapsed in on itself. The flagship of Supreme War Leader Cathax was now visibly breaking apart, huge sections of its hull floating away. "I never truly believed it would work this well," Olivia admitted quietly. At exactly 5 minutes after the sunburst devices had activated, the Zoraxian command ships lost all power and structural integrity. The flagship split into 3 massive sections, internal explosions tearing through each piece. The smaller vessels fared no better. Those that could still move were retreating at maximum speed, but most were simply drifting, their crews unable to control them with their fractured exoskeletons. 5 minutes, Admiral Doyle announced, exactly as Dr. Price predicted. The bridge erupted in cheers. Officers hugged each other. Some wept openly. After years of preparation and fear, after expecting to face a long and likely losing battle, it was over. 5 minutes had changed everything. Dr. Price stood quietly watching the destruction on the main screen. She felt no joy at the suffering of the Zoraxians, only relief that Earth had been saved. Admiral Doyle put a hand on her shoulder. "You did it, Eleanor. You saved us all." She shook her head. "Lieutenant Bennett and his teams did the hard part. We need to find them." Doyle nodded and turned to Olivia. "Captain Grant, organize rescue operations for our shuttles and any damaged vessels and—" He paused, looking at the drifting alien ships. "Prepare boarding parties. There may be Zoraxian survivors who need assistance." Olivia was surprised. "Sir, we're going to help them?" "They came as conquerors," Doyle replied. "But we will respond as humans always have, with compassion for those in need. That's the true strength they never understood about us." The battle that was supposed to decide the fate of Earth had ended in just 5 minutes, but its consequences would reshape the galaxy forever. 2 days after the battle, Captain Olivia Grant led a team aboard the remains of the Zoraxian flagship. The once mighty vessel was now a drifting wreck, held together only by emergency force fields deployed by human engineers. Inside, the crystal walls were covered with cracks. Pieces of the structure broke off at the slightest touch. "Careful where you step," Olivia warned her team. "This whole place could fall apart at any moment." They moved slowly through the alien ship, searching for survivors. Most of the Zoraxians had been evacuated to medical facilities on Earth and the larger human ships, but sensor readings suggested some might still be trapped in the deeper sections of the flagship. They found Supreme War Leader Cathax in what remained of the bridge. The once proud alien leader sat slumped in his command chair, his exoskeleton cracked and flaking. 3 of his forearms hung uselessly at his sides. Only one still seemed functional. "Supreme War Leader," Olivia said, approaching carefully. "I am Captain Grant of Earth's Defense Force. We're here to help you." Cathax looked up slowly. His face plates shifted, creating a sound like grinding stones. "Why would you help those who came to conquer you?" "Because that's what humans do," Olivia replied simply. "We fight when we must, but we help when we can." The medical team moved forward to assess the alien leader's condition. Cathax did not resist as they scanned his damaged body. "Your exoskeleton has suffered severe molecular degradation," the lead doctor explained. "But our scientists believe the process can be halted and partially reversed with proper treatment." Cathax studied the humans around him. "You knew our weakness all along," he said. "It wasn't a question." Olivia nodded. "Dr. Eleanor Price discovered it by studying your communications and biological samples from worlds you had visited. One human scientist found what our entire empire missed," Cathax said, his voice hollow. "We never considered that our greatest strength could become our greatest weakness." Later that day, Admiral Doyle convened a meeting with representatives from Earth's governments and military leaders. Lieutenant Paul Bennett and his surviving team members were there, still recovering from their injuries but determined to participate. Dr. Price presented her findings on the Zoraxians' condition. The radiation effects appear to be permanent, but not fatal in most cases. Their exoskeletons will never regain their former strength, but we can help them stabilize what remains. "And their ships?" Admiral Doyle asked. "Beyond repair," Eleanor replied. "The molecular structure has been permanently altered. They cannot be salvaged." A government representative spoke up. "So what happens now? Do we help the aliens who came to conquer us, or do we send them away?" Admiral Doyle looked around the room. "They came as invaders, but they remain as refugees. I believe we should offer them sanctuary until their people can send ships to retrieve them." Not everyone agreed, but after discussion, the decision was made to provide medical care and temporary housing for the stranded Zoraxians. 1 week later, a transmission arrived from the Galactic Council, the governing body that had classified humans as a Category 5 species, physically weak and technologically primitive. The council representative, a being of pure energy contained in a hovering metallic sphere, appeared on the main screen in the United Earth Defense Force headquarters. "The council has reviewed the recent conflict between Earth and the Zoraxian Empire," the representative said. "We find ourselves mistaken in our assessment of human capabilities." Admiral Doyle, Dr. Price, Captain Grant, and Lieutenant Bennett stood side by side as they faced the alien diplomat. "Humans may lack the physical attributes of more evolved species," the representative continued, "but your strategic thinking and scientific innovation have proven extraordinary. Additionally, your treatment of defeated enemies demonstrates unusual ethical development." "We did what was necessary to defend our world," Admiral Doyle said. "Nothing more, nothing less." The council representative's sphere pulsed with light. Effective immediately, Earth has been reclassified as a Category 1 civilization, a protected sovereign system with full diplomatic recognition. The Zoraxian Empire has been ordered to pay reparations and is forbidden from approaching your solar system again. After the transmission ended, the humans looked at each other in silence. Finally, Lieutenant Bennett spoke. "So we've been promoted from easy prey to respected power in the span of a week. All because we understood something the Zoraxians didn't," Dr. Price added. "True strength comes in many forms." A month later, as the last of the Zoraxian rescue ships prepared to depart Earth orbit, Supreme War Leader Cathax requested a final meeting with the humans who had defeated him. His exoskeleton had been partially stabilized, though he would never again be the imposing warrior he once was. In a conference room aboard the Valiant, Cathax faced Admiral Doyle, Captain Grant, Dr. Price, and Lieutenant Bennett. "My people have always believed that physical power determines superiority," Cathax said. "For thousands of years, our crystal bodies made us unstoppable. We conquered because we could, and because we saw other species as lesser beings." He looked at each human in turn. "You have taught us a valuable lesson, one that my people will not forget." "What will happen to you when you return home?" Olivia asked. "I will face judgment for my failure," Cathax replied, "but I will also share what I have learned. Perhaps in time, the Zoraxian Empire will change its ways." As the alien leader turned to leave, Dr. Price stepped forward. "Supreme War Leader, before you go, I have something for you." She handed him a small data crystal. This contains medical information that may help your scientists better understand the changes to your exoskeletons. It might improve the quality of life for those affected. Kathak seemed stunned by this gesture. You would help us? After everything we intended to do to your world? Knowledge should be shared, Eleanor said simply. That's another thing humans believe. After the Zoraxians departed, Earth began to adapt to its new role in the galactic community. The United Earth Defense Force was reorganized and expanded. Dr. Price's research team received unlimited funding to develop new protective technologies. Lieutenant Bennett and his surviving team members were honored as heroes. Monuments were built to remember those who had sacrificed their lives in the battle. Schools taught children about the day Earth defended itself in just 5 minutes. 6 months later, Captain Olivia Grant stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned UES Hope, Earth's first true deep space exploration vessel. Admiral Doyle joined her, watching as the final preparations for launch were completed. We've come a long way in a short time, Doyle said. Olivia nodded. From potential conquest to galactic power. All because one scientist saw a weakness. No one else noticed? No, Doyle corrected her. All because humans have always understood something that the Zoraxians didn't. What's that, sir? Doyle smiled as he watched Earth's new fleet assembling in orbit. That true strength isn't about how hard your shell is. It's about how you think, how you adapt, and how you treat others, even your enemies. That's the real power the aliens never saw coming. The Hope's engines glowed to life as Earth took its first steps into a larger universe. No longer seen as weak, but finally recognized for the unique strength humans had possessed all along.